Hey, welcome to the Wealth Feed. This is episode 47. I am Lexi Johnson. I am an international speaker. I'm a licensed financial coach and strategist. Thank you for joining and watching. Let us know who you are, where you're watching from. We always love to acknowledge those who take the time out to watch. So whether you're watching live or whether you're watching the replay, uh, drop something in the chat. Let us know that you're here. Okay. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about the G7 versus Brics. We're going to be more particularly, we're going to be talking about how that may affect us here in the United States, because I live in the United States. But it may affect some of, other countries the same way, particularly those in the G7. We're going to talk about all of that in just a moment. Listen, we had our masterclass that took place on this last Tuesday, 5 steps to an unshakable cash reserve. And we had an absolutely amazing time. If you missed it, you missed it, because I'm not the one who does recordings a whole lot. Especially if I want people to, kind of share and be vulnerable. I don't do recordings so that they get all out everywhere. But stay tuned for the next one. We're going to be doing it sometime in the fall, I think sometime around October. So you're not going to want to miss it. 2 hours of just understanding how to have an unshakable cash reserve, not only understanding, but how to go about doing it. What are the steps that we need to take to make sure that we have an unshakable cash reserve? And listen, with everything that's going on right now, particularly the subject that we're getting ready to cover today, you definitely want to understand how to build and maintain unshakable reserves. So we're going to get right into it today. Normally we have, a crazy money story for the week. We do not have that today because I wanted to get right into the topic at hand. So if you're just joining us, we are talking about Brics, really, and this new currency, okay, that they are having some serious talks about, right? And if they come together and they launch this currency, what will it mean for those of us that are here in the United States? So, and how do we prepare? So before we get to what would it mean for us and how do we prepare, I want to give you all some history because you know what? I know that the average person isn't really reading up on all this stuff like I do, right? I'm just kind of a nerd in that way, right? I know the average person isn't kind of keeping up with these things. So that's why I'm here and that's why you tune in, right? But what I will say is, I also want you to go and research for yourself because I am human, right? I can misspeak or not get some information right. It is not my intent at all, right? However, I'm human. The other thing that I want to say before we get into talks, and I'll remind us again when we get to the section of how do we prepare, is that this is for educational purposes only. I am not in any means giving out any kind of financial recommendations or financial advice. This is for educational purposes only. You're watching, you're out there knowing that you're watching me. I don't know who you are. I may know who you are, but I don't know what your personal financial situation is, right? So therefore, what I'm saying here in general may not be the move for you specifically, right? So this is for educational purposes only. All right. So let's get into it. I first want to start with a little bit of history, right? Because how did we get to this point? How did we get to this point where we have other nations that are coming together, right, to do business, and also now very seriously talking about launching a reserve currency? How did we get here, right? The US has led the pack in this reserve currency for nearly a century, right? And so, first of all, let's talk about what is a reserve currency, because there's reserve currency and then there's managed currency. Okay, so a reserve currency is foreign currencies held by central banks. When a country acquires that foreign currency, they don't place it. They don't place that currency in the general circulation. It stays in that central bank. Okay, so that's what reserve currency is called. And the United States dollar is a reserve and has been a reserve currency held in many countries' central banks for, like I said, nearly a century. And um, believe it or not, there are more US dollars being held outside of the United States than there are US dollars in the United States. Okay. So, again, the United States dollar has been the premier reserve currency for nearly a century. I think after the US dollar, then the next one is the euro. And yeah, so what is a reserve currency? Again, it's a globally recognized currency that can be used for trade globally, meaning it's recognized across all countries, right? The majority of countries. Like, you can't just take any country's currency and then say, hey, I want to buy this. You know, some, depending on what country it is, it'll be like, well, we don't recognize that here. If you've traveled internationally, you kind of know this, right? There, when you go to many other countries, you could use the dollar, you could use the euro, but you probably can't use, a Ghanaian cedi everywhere you go. You can't use the naira from Nigeria everywhere you go. You can't use the shilling everywhere you go. You can't use the peso everywhere you go, right? So there are very few currencies that you can use it wherever you go. And the United States dollar has been that premier reserve currency for, like I said, nearly a century. All right, so now that we know what a reserve currency is, when you hear me say the term, you'll understand what I'm saying. So as I said, let's talk a little history. How did we get to this point where we have Brics now seriously talking about launching a currency to compete with the dollar? All right. So we're going to go all the way back, but don't worry, we ain't going to be here that long, right? But we're going to go back. I want to go as far back to 1944. That's where we're going to start. We could probably go back further than that, but that's where we're going to start. In fact, we could probably go back to Genesis, but this is where we're going to start, okay? In 1944, there were 44 countries. That's something. There were 44 countries that agreed to fix their currencies to the dollar, which in turn, the dollar was backed by or fixed to gold. Okay, so it had a gold standard. And at that time, it was like gold was like $35 an ounce at that time. So before I go more into history, I want to tell you all, this reminds me of, because the title I put was G7 versus Brics. Now, if you're not familiar with the term G7, G7 is made up of the 7, countries that are what they call economically advanced. So that's Canada, France, Germany, Italy, Japan, the UK, and the US. Okay, those make up the G7. Okay, then you've got Brics. And with Brics, you got Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, and they've got several other countries who've applied, like Iran, Argentina, and some more, right? But right now, Brazil, Russia, India, China, South Africa, as far as I know. Okay, so you got the G7, and then you got Brics. And what it reminded me of is almost any organization that has a split, okay? Because Russia used to be part of the G7. They got into the G7, I believe, in 1997, and then they were put out. They then became the G8. Then they were put out in 2014. Okay, so then it went back to being the G7. Now, Russia was put out in 2014 because they had annexed Crimea, which is part of Ukraine. Okay, and so the United States government was like, "Oh no, we ain't having that. You violated." And Russia wasn't trying to, back down from their actions. And so they put them out of the G8 and then they became the G7 again. So this reminds me of any organization that goes through these splits. Denominations, this is how denominations get started, right? Because it starts, you got this one group, then you got a group of people who go off and do something or believe a little something different or want to do something different. They split up. Sororities, fraternities, same thing, right? You have one where it started, and then one said, well, I think we can do it differently, or we feel like we can do it better over here, or this, that, or whatever. And then you got all these different ones, right? So it reminded me of that. You got the G7, like probably is like in high school when you have like the cool kids, right? And so you got the G7, they're like the cool kids, all right? And then you got Brics, okay? And they are like the underdog, okay? But they are coming for the cool kids, right? And so this is what's going on. Brics is coming for the cool kids because they have had enough. So let me get back to the history and then we'll talk about why they've had enough. Okay. So 1944, we talked about that. We had the dollar was backed by gold, had 44 countries who had, attached themselves to the dollar. And so all was great, right? In 1970, the number of countries that were holding US dollars had exploded, right? And the amount of dollars that they were holding had exploded, so much so that the United States could not keep. If all of the countries had turned in their dollars, the United States would not have enough gold to exchange for those dollars. So in 1971, President Nixon said, all right, the dollar is now no longer going to be backed by gold, okay? Because the US was not going to be able to supply all that gold. So they took it off of the gold standard. So what do you think happened? The value of the dollar plummeted. So then the government had to figure out, what are we going to do? Because we still want the US dollar to be the premier dollar. So we got to do something. So what happened was, so they came off the gold standard in 1971. In 1974, they reached an agreement, and this was with the help of Henry Kissinger. I think he led this whole thing, but they came to an agreement with Saudi Arabia and the other OPEC countries. Do your research on that, OPEC countries. And they agreed that they would sell oil, trade oil, all of that only in United States dollars. So this is what put the US dollar back on top, right? So in exchange for them selling oil only in US dollars, the United States said then, okay, we're going to defend your country, Saudi Arabia, and all the other countries in OPEC, okay? So that was that. So then the US dollar, value goes back up. It's the premier, it's the premier reserve currency once again. Now, fast forward, I'm going to skip way forward to 2022. We have all this stuff going on with Russia and Ukraine, okay? And so what does the president do? He decides, the government, or however they came to the decision, but they decide they're going to sanction Russia. Now, remember what I said, Brics is like this, the underdog, the little brother, the you got the cool kid and then the not so cool kid, because Russia had been put out of the G8 in 2014. Now, here we go again, Russia deciding to do whatever they do, which upset the United States. And so the United States put sanctions on them, okay? And so after a relationship like that, right, where you got a country or a set of countries that have been dominating you, and you just trying to break through and do your thing, right? Good, bad, or indifferent. You're trying to break through and do your thing. And then they come and they slap you down again. You get to a point where you had it. right? So I believe Russia is beyond that point. I believe they have, the president, and he has had it. They're beyond that point, right? Now, again, I'm not getting into whether or not what Russia did was right or this, that, or the other. I'm not getting into any of that. I'm just merely stating what has gone down. So then, so now Russia's like, all right, we're either going to lay down, right? Roll over, accept sanctions, get in line, do what they want us to do, or we're going to find a way to just finally break free, right? When you're in a relationship like that, one is dominating, the other is trying to be great too, but can't be great. Eventually, either the underdog folds or they come out swinging, right? And so this is what Russia's doing. Okay, they are not laying down. They're like, no, we're coming out swinging, right? And so now they have really gotten serious about um, creating a currency, a reserve currency that is going to definitely compete with the dollar. And I think this is my personal opinion. I think that this, if the United States doesn't have some type of comeback for this, that they will actually uh, dethrone the dollar. Okay, we know the dollar has been declining in value already anyway, right? And this will just help it along. Okay. And the thing is, because you still have some people in government and economists and other places and titles who are saying, "Oh, don't worry about it. They're not going to be that much of a threat." Da, da, da. And I'm like, I think y'all might want to pay attention. Okay, so some people may believe that they're really not going to be a threat, or they could also trying not to get people panicked. Or sometimes when you've been on top for so long, when you have been the champion for so long, you don't prepare like you used to. You don't condition like you used to, right? You don't stay on top of your toe, on your toes. You haven't had anyone to challenge you. So you just take for granted any competition that comes along. And so I think a little bit of all of that is going on, right? So here's Brics. They're talking about launching this currency. Now, you have to understand the countries that make up Brics, okay? Is those countries alone, because I named off a few, but I think it's a total of 8. But those countries alone make up 50% of the top of the world's commodities, meaning they produce, okay, those commodities. And that's a big deal. So when we're talking about commodities, we're talking about wheat, rice, grains, oil, all of these different things. So right now with the countries that they have, yeah, their countries produce the top 50% of that, right? So if their countries are producing the top 50% of commodities that countries everywhere are using, right? What happens when they launch a currency, and not just any currency, a currency that is going to be backed by gold? That's right. Their currency, if they launch it, is going to be backed by gold. The dollar is not backed by anything. In fact, most of these fiat currencies, I'm going to say most of these currencies in these countries are fiat. They're not backed by anything. Okay? It's a piece of paper that somebody has said, this is what we're using, and they have ascribed value to it. But outside of that, I mean, it's not backed by anything. It has no value, right? So their currency is going to be backed by gold. Okay, So there's a lot going on, in that, a lot more detail and stuff that I won't get into here. We'll be here all night long. But again, like I said, you may want to kind of, keep your eyes on this and keep looking into this, because if they are successful, okay, if they have the perfect set of circumstances to launch this reserve currency, what will it mean for those of us in the United States, and maybe not only the United States, but also Europe too, okay? Because under the dollar is the euro. So what does it mean? Well, here's what it's going to mean, okay? Here's what it's going to mean. Give me just a second. All right, here's what it's going to mean. The US dollar, of course, is going to continue to diminish. The value of it is going to continue to diminish. Central banks from countries all over are going to begin dumping their dollar reserves. Okay, there's no value in it, right? Low value or no value in it. And because they are dumping the reserves, this is going to cause hyperinflation. Okay, it's going to cause hyperinflation. It's going to cause interest rates to spike. Okay, because they're going to want to compensate for the loss of purchasing power. Okay, the value of the dollar has been going down. We know this. We walk into the stores. Yesterday, the bread was $1. Today, the bread is $3. Okay, so your purchasing power, which you used to be able to go into the store and buy with $25, you can't walk in there with $25 today and buy it, right? So it's losing purchasing power. You got falling asset prices, and all of this, okay, is accelerating the decline of the dollar. Okay. Now there has been a trend of de-dollarization even before Brics was starting to, talk about their thing or got even more serious about it. Because believe me, y'all, they've been talking about this for a while. Okay. But this is going to help accelerate all of that, right? So let's just bring it home. What does that mean? You say hyperinflation and spiking interest rates. What does that mean? Okay, real estate, mortgages. Okay, any loan has any interest attached to it because interest is going up. Your credit card rates are going up. Okay, simple, products that we buy all the time that we don't necessarily think about, like because we've got so many products made in China, made in India, we don't think about those things. Those things are going to skyrocket, right? Those tennis shoes that our children love to get into and buy the latest ones and all that stuff, because those things are not made in the USA. They are made in these countries that are part of Brics, right? Things are going to get super expensive. So what does that mean? So now that we know what it means for us, right? A lot of things are going to get expensive, and the value of our dollar is like they're going in the opposite direction. So the dollar is nosediving and the prices are skyrocketing. Okay. So how do we prepare? Right? Because even if this dollar is not launched this year or next year or whatever, we still got de-dollarization going on. And trust and believe, obviously, they're going to work it out until they get to a place where they can launch it. So how do we prepare? Right? We got to take this time to prepare. All right. Well, one, you may want to invest more in defensive stocks. What are defensive stocks? Defensive stocks are stocks that no matter what's going on in the economy, they're going to do well, right? So we're talking about things like your utilities. We're talking about groceries because people still got to eat. People still got to pay like gas and all that kind of stuff. So think about things that are like staples, consumer staples. Those are the things that are that make up your defensive stocks. Okay. So you may want to consider starting or increasing your investments in those. You may also want to look at foreign currencies. Okay. So Inflation doesn't only decrease a currency's purchasing power domestically, but it can also weaken a currency compared to other countries' tenders. So it's like, okay, the US is losing value, but the other countries too. How is the US dollar going to scoop down below some other countries? Or what's going on with other countries and their dollars? So the US dollar and the euro in the last year were at parity for the first time in 20 years, right? So what did that mean? That meant that you could make a trip overseas for less, right? So, but on the other side, if you're not in a place where you hold dollars and hold euros, right? Then they're at a disadvantage when they're trying to purchase from foreign nations or trying to purchase from here because it's super expensive. So with this Brics dollar, that's what's going to happen. It's going to be the flip. Okay. So you might want to, get into foreign currencies, okay, as a way to hedge inflation. Something else that you might want to do, and we've talked about this numerous times on this channel, is getting into gold, silver, and other precious metals and commodities. Okay, these have been historical favorites, and y'all know me and what I say about gold and silver and such metals, because those things are God's money. That, if you want to know what real money is those things: gold, silver, precious metals. That's God's money. It ain't going anywhere. Okay, this fiat currency that we have, made by man. Okay, so it ain't made to last, right? But gold and all that is a favorite for hedging against inflation. So generally, I work with my clients and I'm encouraging them to, have a portion of their portfolio in gold, silver, other precious I'm trying to combine three words, other precious metals and commodities. Okay, so we want to do that. And by the way, I think they said like since 1979, like the US dollar has declined by 77%, maybe more now. So yeah, you may want to get into that. Okay. Real estate. Probably now is the time. I think we want to get these things going in preparation for what's to come. Okay. Real estate is a tangible asset. It tends to hold its value even during times of inflation. Okay, so as prices rise, so do the property values, so do the rents. And so if you're on the right side of that, meaning you are a real estate investor, then it's you're going to be able to hedge against that inflation. Okay. What else? Cryptocurrencies. This will probably be my last one that I share with you all. Cryptocurrencies are another way in which you could protect against. And these things that I'm naming, it's not just in preparation of this Brics currency if it launches. This is just for times of inflation, hyperinflation, period. This is just for de-dollarization, period. And I did an episode on de-dollarization before, and I'm sure I probably went over some of these same things that I'm telling you now, right? So cryptocurrencies. So you may want to just get out of fiat currencies, I wouldn't say entirely, but as it comes to investing, right? You may not want to get into Forex. You may want to get out of fiat altogether and do cryptocurrencies. I don't necessarily advise it. I'm the kind of person that's like, don't put all your eggs in one basket. So these things that I have recommended to you, it's nice to have a little something in all of them, right? Because diversification is key. So, but there are cryptocurrencies, and so you can invest in cryptocurrencies. You've got, digital assets like Bitcoin and Ethereum. And there's so many more, but those are the big ones, right? But you want to take a portion of your portfolio and put them in cryptocurrencies, because there are a lot of countries who are friendly to cryptocurrency, and more countries that are becoming friendly to cryptocurrency. And that's going to be another way of being able to purchase, you know, across the borders, if you will, within the borders and across the borders. Okay, so cryptocurrencies. So that's the last one that I want to share. And I want to remind you all that this is for educational purposes only. This is not financial advice. I'm not giving you any financial recommendations because I do not know your situation. But I wanted to share with you how you can prepare. And listen, I want to say this because I know that there are people out there who are, for lack of a better word, afraid. I don't even want to say lack of a better word because it is what it is. You're afraid to invest. You're trying to hold on to what you got, right? And I'm just going to say this. In Genesis 1:28, the Lord said to Adam and Eve to be fruitful and to multiply. And when he told them to be fruitful and to multiply, he told them to be fruitful, to multiply, and subdue. That's what he told them. And when he said be fruitful, multiply, and subdue, he wasn't talking about just making more humans. Okay? That was part of it. But what he was saying was every resource that I have given you, okay, because he had prepared the garden for them. Before he even created them, that garden was prepared for them. And that garden had gold and, all kinds of precious metals and all these things, right? He said, be fruitful and multiply. Every resource that I have put here for you, multiply it, right? Not only produce, okay? So let's bring it to our day. We produce by, we either go to a job or we run a business. There's some way that we actively make income, active income. We produce. But God didn't stop there. The command did not stop there. He said to be fruitful and to multiply. Okay. And so if you are a kingdom citizen and you are afraid of investing, we need to talk. Okay. Because we're out of order when we don't invest. All right. And I'm not talking about just money. Okay. I'm talking every resource. We are supposed to be people who can multiply, right? If I give you, I don't know, 10 blocks, you need to make 20 blocks. Okay. But we are supposed to be a people who multiply. Okay. Not just add, because people are like, well, I work and then I can just put $500 aside each week. That's adding. That's not multiplying. Okay. We are supposed to multiply. And so if you are a kingdom citizen and you are, leery about investing, you're afraid to invest, we need to talk because we need to get that mindset together. We need to get to that mindset together because the only way that we're going to come out of this financially healthy, and when I say this, I'm talking about all kinds of things that are going on in the economy right now. Okay. Not just what Brics is talking about, but then you've got the digital currency, US digital currency that they're working on and going to bring to fruition. And they've already been preparing, okay, because they put the Fed Now system in place, right? That wasn't just to, make it easy for, yes, it's making it easy, to bank right now. But it's also to make way for that digital currency that's coming, right? So de-dollarization has been here. It's going to continue, right? And so the only way to beat it is to multiply. That's the only way to beat it. Okay. So I believe in the comments, my link is there. If you've not had a free consult with me before, I'm inviting you to have one. And the link is there. So it's in the comments, right? So that's that. If you have any questions, go ahead and drop them in the chat. Even if you're watching the replay, you can drop your questions in the chat. Happy to answer them if I can when I check out your comments later. Okay. All right. So that's that. Real quick, what's coming up for Money Mastery for her? Our next, because we just had a team come back from Ghana, mission team come back from Ghana. They went towards the end of July and came. They spent about 12 days there, I think. And so that mission went really, really well. And we've got another team going out to Kenya in less than 30 days. And so, yeah, I think we're at the 28-day mark. And so you can still, it's not too late. It's not too late. You can still donate to that mission. I'm going to drop the link in the comments there. You can still donate to the team that is going to Kenya. And it's not to the team, it's for the projects and things that we're going to be doing there. Okay, we've got a freshwater project that's going on in Mombasa. We're helping a mission station get some of the roofing done. We are, helping girls to have access to sanitary napkins. We are giving out school supplies. We are providing shoes and socks. So there's a lot that we're doing. We're going to be there for a couple of weeks. And so every dollar counts, right? Every dollar counts. And right now, our US dollar is worth a lot over there, right? $1 is about 143 of theirs. So your dollar can do a lot. So there is no donation that is too small, and there's certainly no donation that is too large. And so we appreciate you in advance for donating. Well, listen, I hope that the information that has been given today has been helpful to you, and that most of all, I really want you to just be like taking the information in. I want you to take action, okay? And if you're not sure what you need to do, where you need to go, how do you start this, then get on my calendar, okay? And let's have a chat about your situation, all right? That's it for this episode of The Wealth Seed. We'll see you next week. Bye. Peace.